So here I am working on Fusion 360 and we're going to start by creating our marble run. And you see I've got a whole bunch of marble run stuff in my marble run project, and I will probably give you access to that marble run project, but you'll have to at least create one of your own marble runs in order to complete this project successfully. So I'm just going to close that off so we can't see it, and we've got our full screen here. I'm going to start by creating a sketch, and the sketch I'm going to use is going to be a circle tool, an arc tool, and I'm just going to use the 3-point arc. I'm going to draw it on this plane here, and I'm basically just going to click on this point here and this point here, and then pull out an arc. And I want a reasonable amount of depth. That one there will be fine in order to make that happen. I'm going to go down here a whole, let's just go on 1.5 centimeters down, do the same exact shape there, and then I'm going to use the line tool. I'm going to press L to get the line tool going. I'm going to go out one and around like that. And yours doesn't have to be this same shape. I like the little walls on the edge, just stop it from going over. And that basically is what I'm going to do. I'm going to hit stop sketch now. I'm now going to modify that, and I'm going to pull out that shape there till it's long enough for me to be happy. So basically, in this case, I'm going to probably go out to about 285 millimeters. So if I zoom out, I can see that there. Click on OK. I now have one part of my marble run. I'm going to create another part now. So I'm going to go to right hand view here. Move that back to the middle. I'm going to press the M key to move, and I'm going to move this object. Make sure you've got body selected, and I'm going to create a copy, and I'm going to drag this one down here. So I've got this one and that one. I'm going to rotate this one 10 degrees that way, and you need to rotate it 10 degrees or more. Actually, I might try 15 this time, so I'm going to rotate it 15 degrees this time in this direction, and click on OK. And I'm going to press M to move this one, and I'm going to rotate this one 15 degrees back the other way. So I've got a fair amount of slope on both sides in order to do this. I'm now going to go and look at, I might move this up at this angle. You'll see it sort of moves in a funny way, so I might just grab it by that handle there and move it so that it's like this, so that the marble should run down here and into here. So now if I look at this from my home view, you can see I've got a marble run coming down like that, and that should flow nicely into there. I'm going to make this one a little bit different. I'm going to press OK on this one. I'm going to go to top view now. I'm going to press the M key again. This time I'm going to rotate it about that far and move it so that it's like that, say for example. So you see that it's going to roll down into here and stop here and press on OK. So I now have that sort of thing happening. Next thing I'm going to really quickly do is I'm going to create a new sketch with the line tool and just quickly draw a line across the top here like so. Stop that sketch, and now I'm going to press the modify button and pull both those two areas here out. Let's just go 10 mil. Now, bit concerned that that's going to not quite fall in properly, so I'm going to press the move tool now. Just move this guy here back a little bit further like that. Let's look at it from the top view. Maybe rotate it just a touch more like that, so it's going to fall into there like that, and making sure there's enough space for a ball to actually fall down there. Might just drag it that way a bit so it'll fall into there nicely. It's just a matter of playing around until we're happy. I'm going to press OK now. I'm going to look at this on the right hand side, and you can see that this one's below the line here. So I'm going to press move and grab this one and this one, and I'm just going to drag these so that they're above this blue line here. And that's important so I can actually build my frame. I'll give it a bit more space above that. So I'm going to press on OK now, and I'm going to build some sort of frame in order to hold this up so it looks a bit more realistic. So I could just use a couple of circles. So let's just draw the circle tool here. And we're going to draw it on this base plane. And we're going to draw our first circle underneath here. You can't quite see it. Let's just make it exactly 30 in size. And I might click on another one over here, so around about here. And 30 in size. And I might put another one here, also 30 in size. And I'm going to really put another one just here, also 30 in size. So I've got these sort of poles that I'm going to use. I'm going to hit stop sketch now. So looking at this from this angle here, you can see that I've got these poles coming up. So I need to be able to press Q to modify. You can actually just, instead of pressing modify, you can press Q. I'm going to modify this one, and I'm going to bring them, extend them to an object, and the object I'm going to choose is this. To the base, actually, I need to select this one here. Now, I'm not going to choose join, I'm going to choose new body, and that's important for what we're doing here. Once I press OK, my other two circles will go away, so I need to turn that sketch back on so I can play around with those two circles now. So I've now got this one here. I'm going to press Q and select this one, and once again I'm going to bring it up to the object, and I'm going to select that underside there, and once again I'm going to click new body. So that I've got now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 bodies. Just for some really good effect now, I'm going to really quickly put some text in there. So I'm going to go right click and I'm going to go to the text tool, and I'm going to call this one here, and I'm going to type in marble run over here. So I've got these words that say marble run. Might make it a touch bigger, maybe 13. And then I'm going to rotate it so that it's in line with that one there. And click on OK. So I've now got that text in there. Stop the sketch. And let's basically modify this one. Select the sketch, and I'm going to pull that out maybe 3 millimeters. And I'm once again going to create a new body and click on OK. You'll now see my number of bodies is massive because each one of those letters is a new body. Okay, so I've got that marble run text out there, and that should work, hopefully, when I take it into Blender. So in order to get this into Blender, you're going to have to make sure that all of your bodies are turned on. I'm going to right click up here. I'm going to save it as an STL. Make sure the setting is to high. Make sure it's not clicked here. Click OK and give it a file name. Make sure you remember where you save it so that when you import it into Blender, it will work very easily for you. So here we are in Blender, and we've got the default cube in the middle of the default screen. So I'm going to press Function Delete to get rid of that default cube. I'm going to go Add and add a mesh and just make it a plane. I'm going to press S to scale out that plane so that it fills up all but one square all the way around the outside. And now I'm going to go File, oops, too far, File, and I'm going to import an STL, and I'm going to find in my documents in Year 9, in 3D Digital Design, in Blender Resources, in my Marble Run folder, it's Marble Run 4. I'm going to press Import. There it is there. Going to basically have to scale it down now, so I'm going to press S to scale it and just drag it in. Notice if you drag it too far, it goes out the other way. So I'm going to bring it in about there. Let's actually now press R to rotate that, and I'm going to rotate it around the X axis so it only rotates that way. And I'm going to type in 90 to make it fit perfectly that way. If yours went the wrong way, you could put a negative number in front. You can see it's around the wrong way now. But that's how it's going to basically be for me. I'm going to go back to View and Camera, and I'm just going to drag this around until I get it right. It's actually a bit small, so I'm going to scale it up just a touch so that it fills up a little bit more of my screen here. And that's going to be the basis of my marble run. Next thing I'm going to do, that's the cursor there where the ball's going to appear. I'm going to add my ball, which is a mesh, a UV sphere. There it is there. So basically going to drag that up so that's up above my camera. I'm going to go view and top, and I'm going to go view and orthographic, so I know that it's in orthographic mode, so I can make sure it's definitely going to line up. Now that I can see it with that in perspective, let's zoom up just a little bit. I can scale that down and then move it around till I'm happy with its location. Still a bit too big. That'll be better. So now if I go back to view and camera, you can see that that ball's ready to go. It's probably a little bit high. Let's leave it so it's just off camera, so that when it falls onto that platform, it'll be ready to roll. A few extra things I'm going to do just to make the scene a little bit better. I'm going to click over here somewhere. I'm going to add another mesh. There'll be a plane. There it is there. I'm going to rotate it, this one around the Y axis by 90 degrees. I'm going to scale it up so it's like a back wall. There it is there. Just move it into place. Doesn't need to be very good because basically I'm not going to see this edge over here anyway. And I'm going to click over here somewhere. I'm going to add another mesh, add another plane. This time I'm going to rotate it around the X axis 90 degrees, so RX 90. And then I'm going to S to scale. Oops, I need to click to accept that. So RX 90 and click to accept. Now it's S to scale and scale that one right up too. Let's just drag that up so it's nice. And this one over here should also be nice. Right, so I don't know why that one's black and that one's grey. It's probably just the lighting. So we can see there that we've got our scene set up. If I zoom back out, you can see that I've just got two big walls. And we're going to never angle our camera so that we see anything but those two things there. But now if I go render image, you'll see that I've got that in the background. So it looks like it's in the corner of some room. So here I am looking at my screen here. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to right click over on this one here to select the ball, and I'm going to add physics to it. So it's going to be an object which has physics added to it, which means it will act as if it's under gravity for starters, and it will act as if other objects are also under gravity or also in its way. So let's click on the physics button over here and create a rigid body, and this is called rigid body physics. If I now press play down here just below the timeline, you'll see that it drops down out of sight. Okay, and you'll see that this yellow line is working here, and that's basically baking an animation, and now it will replay and go back through. So I'm going to hit stop. We've currently got 250 frames of animation, and you can see there we've got 250 frames at our end. That's our starters at 1. We're currently on frame 56. Let's go back to frame 1 and let's add the next bit of physics. The next thing I'm going to add physics to is the floor. So basically I'm going to go rigid body again, and now if I press play, you'll see that both the floor and the ball drop away at the same rate. We don't want the floor to drop away, so we're going to uncheck dynamic, and now we're going to press play, and you'll see that in the background there the ball's just sitting there. You can't quite see it. Let's just rotate around. There it is there. It's actually inside that pylon, but you can see that it stops on the floor there nicely. Let's go back to view camera and do the same thing. Now I'm going to press stop and take it back and do the same thing. I'm going to add rigid body physics to this and turn the dynamic off. Now when I press play, you'll expect the marble run to work, but it doesn't really, because it's got a funny collision sort of detection on it where it's actually treating it like it's a box. So let's actually change our collision detection, which is a rigid body collision section here. The shape of it is currently what we call a convex hull. We're going to change it to a mesh, and let's see what happens now. So I'll press play, and you'll see that the ball starts to roll down. It's very slow. That's sort of okay. We can cope with that. And then it rolls down to there, and it doesn't get very far. So I'm going to press pause and take it back to the start. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to extend the amount of animation we've got. Now you wish it would just be this number here, so if I just type in 600 just to make sure that we've got enough and press play, you'll see that it bakes its way through the animation. It's going through, and you'd expect it just to keep going. But once it gets to the 250th frame, the marble stops rolling, but the animation still tries to keep calculating. That is because our cache which is in this button here, our rigid body cache is actually ending at frame 250. Let's actually extend it out to 600 frames. So basically, it can store all of those frames in memory. So then, as it rolls down, and as I can say, it's very slow at the moment. Okay, and now it's rolling down, and it's going to keep going. And we probably only really need about 500 frames of animation at this point. Let's just come back here. Let's zoom in really close and have a really quick observation of a few things. As we see it down now, it's actually sliding a little bit too much before it goes in. The friction is probably a little bit too low on this object. So let's go back to the rigid body over here, and we'll turn the friction right up. And also we'll do the same on the ball. I need to stop it at this point. Zoom out just a little bit and select the ball and turn the friction up to 100 or full amount. Let's now press play and see what happens. You can see it's rolling down there. It's rolling a lot more nicely now. And it goes a little bit out of touch there. Hits there and just spins a little bit and then comes back down again. And the animation's a little bit slower now, but it's a little bit nicer in terms of the roll of the ball. Let's see if we can improve that. I'm going to press stop here. And let's just have a look at how this animation's working. Let's zoom right up, and you can see that the ball, as I look up from there, is actually floating. So pan down. It's actually floating up above it. It's actually not touching it. If we look at the collision margin here, it's too big. So let's include a collision margin and set that down to 0.01. Let's actually recalculate it again from here. And you can see it's still quite high. Let's change the same setting for this one, 0.01, and let's see how that goes. Still a little bit high above there. So let's just change that to 0.001 and see how that goes. Still a bit high. Add this one here. Collision margin 0.001. And let's see. You can still see it there, but it's not going to show up so badly in the animation now. It's now actually doing quite a good job. Let's just check the animation from the view of the camera. Let's back to the start. We can see it coming down here. And it's coming down and it's rolling quite nicely. And it's stopping there, and it's actually behaving a little bit more like a ball might behave, and rolling its weight back down. And it's going to finish at around about 600 frames nicely there. Okay, that's pretty good. So we've got that animation happening now. Let's just do a few other things just to see if we can make it a little bit smoother. Now in this section here, basically the scene section, we can make a few other changes here. For starters, we can actually increase our steps per second, which is a calculation that it's doing in maths in the background. Let's actually increase that by a factor of 2 to double it, and we can see if that actually makes any change. It's not making any noticeable change, although if I really observed it a lot, it actually is sliding a little bit faster and more smoothly down. And there it goes. It is a touch smoother. The next thing I'm going to do is this solver iterations here is the number of constraint solver iterations made per simulation step. So that 10 times quickly and you'll be doing well. I'm going to basically turn that right up to 100. This is going to slow our calculations down, but you'll find that it actually does make it a little bit nicer as well as it rolls down. Bang. And there it goes. And the final thing we can do is there's the obvious one that you might want to play with is the speed button. The speed button should make the calculations go a bit quicker. Let's just change it to 1.5 and see how that goes. Now speed in most cases really affects the gravity, But you can see there that that animation is going a lot faster, and that is more like what we want. And it's finishing now at about 450 frames is when we want to finish our animation. So let's hit stop here. Let's actually make the end frame 450. I'm pretty happy with that. Let's take it back to the start. Also, let's change our cache back to 450 so that we're not trying to make our computer do something that it shouldn't be doing. And let's go back to our view camera. I said view camera. There we go. And that's it there. This is going to be our animation. I'm very happy with that. I'm not going to change much now that I've got that animation going. It is rather complicated. There's lots of changes you can make there. You can play around with these a little bit more if you want, but I'm pretty happy with those settings, and I would try and match those settings if I was you as well. In this section, we're going to look at the idea of lighting. Now, if I go render and render my image, you can see that it's got a lot of harsh light. In fact, it's totally dark just there. You can't actually see any of the detail. How we fixed this in the past is to go back to this render, this scene setting here. Sorry, this one here. No, I've lost it. This world here, that's the one. And turn environmental lighting on. Now, if I render that now, you can see that it is a lot brighter and sort of like it's in a very, very brightly lit room. The problem I've got with that is if we took a look at the render time, that instantly adds a whole heap of extra time. So I'm going to basically show you a way of doing this without taking or increasing that render time. So let's turn environmental lighting off. It took 7.5 seconds to render that time. Let's go render image now. And you can see that that rendered in 1.33 seconds, which is going to save you a lot of time, especially as you start adding other effects and textures in. So let's look at lighting in a different way. We're going to go 3D view, and you'll see that all our light at the moment is coming from this guy up here. This guy up here is a lamp. You can see it's a lamp here. And you can see now that I've clicked it, I've got access to this lamp button. So I've got a lamp here, and I've got different types of lamps I can use. I can actually change the light. So let's just see what happens if I change the light to red. Okay, and go render. Oops. Render image. There you go. It's a red light. So you can actually change the colors of the light, which is pretty cool. But let's just go back to 3D view. I'm going to change this back to white. White somewhere in the middle. Okay. And I'm going to change it to a spotlight. Now you can see that the spotlight's got rays coming out of it, but I like when I'm using a spotlight to show the cone. So if we click on it, we're going to show the cone. You can see what it's going to do. So I can drag this cone around, and you can see how big the cone is and how big the spot is. And I can also change the size of the spot. So I can drag on this one here, backwards and forwards, just to change the size of the spotlight that I'm using. So there it is there. Bring it back in. I'm actually pretty liking that quite a lot. So I'm going to go and render that view now. You can see I've still got the harsh light happening, but it's got a sort of a nice spotlight effect happening there. And I do sort of like the spotlight a bit, but I like to have more than one. So let's actually have a look at this guy here. There it is there. So I can press, while I've got it selected, Shift and D, and it's given me another one. And if I press Y, it'll allow me to move that in the Y direction. And now I can press rotate around the Z axis and shine it back this way. Maybe pull it up so that it's, there you go. It's covering that nicely. And we've got this area in full light and this area in partial light. Let's render this now. Okay, so you've got this sort of nicely lit area, but it's still very dark off in the offset. So I'm going to go back to my 3D view, and I'm going to go add, and I'm going to add a lamp. I'm going to just add a point lamp, and you can see that point lamp added up there for some reason. That's where the cursor was. So if I bring it over the top here, like it's a lamp in the ceiling, and I actually move it to the back a little bit, I can then go render, render image, and you can see it's a nice brightly lit scene, but it still only took about 1.5 seconds to do. So I've got this nice lighting effects happening, this, this phase here and this phase here, and I can even animate those if I want. But what I'm going to do though is I'm going to go back to the sun one here, And I can turn this down while I'm still in render mode. I'm going to turn it down to maybe 0.2. And I'm going to render this image again. And that's a bit nicer. I like it slightly darker in the background, so it really makes my section of the screen pop. You can play around with the lighting. For example, I could actually change that background lighting now to a blue haze. Let's render that now. And you can see that it just makes the shadows blue, and that's pretty cool as well. I like it a little bit realistic. You might like it a bit more that, or you might like a bit warmer, just a slightly warmer light. So just have a yellow, slight tinge of yellow, and it does actually give it a bit more warmth to the scene without actually taking the grey hues out. But that's lighting, and if we actually were to render that now, we'd actually have a pretty reasonable scene of our marble running down. The final thing I'm going to talk about in this particular tutorial is framing your video using the rule of thirds. The first thing I'm going to do though, while we're doing our framing, is I'm going to turn these lights off. I don't want to see these lights. They're just interrupting me. There's also another light down there that I'll find. Where is it? There it is. Just turn that one off too. Can still see that one. There you go. They're all turned off. Now when I render, they're still there. It's just turned off in my viewport. So I've just turned them off so that they don't disrupt my view and put extra lines on the page, which are going to annoy me. So basically now that I've got that going, I'm going to look through my camera. So view through the camera. Now with my camera, I can basically move it around. We remember how to do this by changing the position and going lock to view, and now I can move it around. So basically what I want to be able to make sure I'm doing, first and foremost, is making sure that I don't see the edge over here of this section. So as I'm looking at it, I don't really want to see off the edge there. So I want to make sure that I'm looking at it from probably there all the way around to about there. So it's still got a lot of scope for me to look around. I can look at it above, I can look at it below. The next thing I don't want to do is I don't want my camera to ever go below that line there. So I need to make sure that I'm not going probably below that scene. But it doesn't look great anyway because you can barely see the ball in there. So I've got that issue happening. The final thing I'm going to do with this is I'm going to need to select the camera. So right click on this line around here to select the camera. And if you can't get the camera for some reason, you can always select it like that. So now I've got the camera selected. I've got the camera selected. I can now click on the camera button and I can turn my composition guides on, and you should have already watched the section on the rule of thirds, and you can see your guidelines here. And you want points of interest in your animation to be on the rule of thirds. So let's move that across, for example, so that this particular section here is on the rule of thirds, as is that one there. So we've got pretty much everything happening on the rule of thirds. That's good composition, as opposed to that's not really great composition, because the rule of thirds, we've got this section here is on my third, it's just below there on my third. So I want to basically make it so that I've got really important points of interest occurring on my third. So I've got that pole there, for example. I've got that line or that crossover there. And if I run my animation from this particular angle, you can see that I've also got the marble run text sort of almost in the third there. That's a better view than I had before, except it's not as great a view of the ball, but we've still got it going. We need to make sure that when we're moving our camera, so we're on our camera here, we've got it selected. Camera's definitely selected here. And we're going to change it for location, rotation, and scale. So if we decide that this is going to be my starting frame at frame 20, so I'm going to lock that in with a keyframe. And now I'm going to basically move it around so that it actually finishes off here. I might want to put another wall over on that side, actually, if I was thinking about it. Let's zoom in. And I'm going to finish with it so that let's just line up this one here with this third here. And zoom in until that is on that third there. So that's where I'm going to finish up, and my animation, I should have basically made it so that I'll get there. So that's going to be about round about where I'm going to be. Let's just change it back to where it was. Zoom in a bit. Now my ball's on the third there. Let's just make that my animation there. So I'm going to basically put that keyframe on the camera there. That should move around, but we've got to make sure that the rule of thirds is being obeyed at all points throughout that actual panning round. So there may be points, for example, going back about here, and I'm not totally happy with that ball being over there on the edge, where it might actually be wise to bring this up and maybe actually have that focusing on the ball there on the third, and then putting a keyframe in and going back. So we've got a slower animation to that point there, and that's where it is there. So you can see it's on the third there, and it's sort of keeping it in that third the whole way down, which is really nice. And that's what we're talking about when we're talking about framing, paying attention to that rule of thirds in as many frames as we possibly can, and that'll get you the best results. The final thing I really probably should do before I go too far is just to get this wall here, right click and go duplicate it. Shift D to duplicate it. We're going to rotate it around the Z axis by 90 degrees, and then we're going to move it back over here. Oops, and we're going to move it over here. Now actually just let's have a look at this rotation now. That way I've got all those walls sorted. I don't have to worry about not having it framed on that side. And that's a much better animation because basically it actually follows that rule of third. There is a bit of a jerkiness there that I probably need to fix in the animation, but that's a pretty good overview of how to set up an animation and frame it nicely.